And I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension and everything and the drama.
How dare! Look at this! How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
There will be no calm. It's just not a calm time in the hockey world right now. It is like it's been a frenzy of things with major trades all over the place, and the landscape of the league kind of shaking down here a little bit. But we plod on through. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, and subscribe wherever you get your audio. Joined by Dan from Fireside Chat. Hello, Dan. Happy Sunday. How are you?
Happy Sunday. How you doing?
I'm playing hurt, as you can hear in my voice, but we're going to grind through this as best as we can. I've been a little fighting this flu bug here, but
are you day to day or week to week?
I feel like I would say I'll be day to day with an upper body injury. I think that's very accurate right now. So, but yeah, it's just wanted to make sure get this podcast out, get back to bed is the objective here.
Well, if you need to call somebody up, let us know. We might be able to work some out.
All right. Well,
we've both cleared waivers to go on each other's shows in the last couple of years, so I'm sure we'll clear waivers again. The waiver wire has been busy enough; no one's got claimed. I'm sure we won't either.
That's very true. And speaking of waivers, that's a good transition, Dan. Jakob Pelletier went on waivers before the season started. He went unclaimed. There was a discussion by myself about Andrei Kuzmenko possibly going on waivers. And then he got on a little bit of a hot streak. And I do actually think that it was not out of the realm of possibility that Kuzmenko was going to go on waivers for that hot streak. But Jakob Pelletier played himself onto the first line for a little bit here in the game against Minnesota with Kadri and Huberdeau, and was kissing helmets and kissing babies. But lo and behold, on Thursday, Andrei Kuzmenko is left out of the lineup last minute, being held out for a late scratch. And then after the first period, Jakob Pelletier is taken out of the game. And it turns out that both of them were traded along with a second-round pick in this year's draft and a seventh-round pick in 2028 for left winger Joel Farabee, who is a 24-year-old first-round pick in 2018, 14th overall.
I think at this point, say just winger because he played right for the Flames last night.
He did. Yes, he did. And then Morgan Frost, who is a center and played center last night, a 25-year-old center from Aurora, Ontario, a first-round pick in 2017, the 27th overall. Frost has 11 goals and 14 assists for 25 points in 50 games, and Farabee has 8 goals, 11 assists, 19 points in 51 games so far. And Farabee last night played 18:01, won 24 shifts, no shots on goal. Frost played 17:37, had 3 shots on goal, was a -2. Let's get first your thoughts on the trade, Dan.
I love the trade. I think we knew the Flames needed centermen. We knew that, who they've been putting there, like Zari, was not a full-time fix. Sharon Govich, not a full-time fix. They needed centermen. We didn't know how that would come, but these are guys that, whether you think there's a rebuild or a playoff team, I think will help the team either way. I think the Flames got two really great young pieces and two pieces that they will want to hang on to for a while. I think moving out the pieces they did, yes, we all like Pelletier as a person and what he's become, but you've got to give something to get something. I think it's an amazing deal for Craig Conroy.
Yeah, I like it too. I called this an intelligent trade because this is not deviating from any plan, right? This is not, you're not cashing in your chips for this big ticket, big money free agency, get your free agent or rental player that you're going all in for a playoff run. You're still on the plan. You're just improving the team. It's essentially a hockey trade for two guys that are in that age group that the Flames are looking for and can be an improvement. Like Joel Farabee is essentially what the Flames were hoping Anthony Mantha was going to be. Unfortunately, Mantha got hurt. And then Morgan Frost is an absolute upgrade on that center, on the center situation, which is, you got Kadri and Backlund. They've definitely missed Zare, and Kevin Rooney and Clark Bishop aren't quite there. And of course, let's not forget the unfortunate experiment that Martin Pospisil has been at center. So I definitely think they've improved their team. And the
difference with, I think, Mantha and Farabee too is Farabee's quite a bit younger.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's true. And I believe a little bit, well, I'll check Puckpedia here, but he's going to be around for a while. Now, Frost is an interesting situation because he is a restricted free agent. So they will have to make an offer on him. I'm assuming that they have already kind of.
Joel Farabee's making more money than Mantha was, because I think Mantha was 3.2 and Frost is $5 million right through 27-28, so a couple more seasons. But at least it's, or sorry, Farabee, yeah, but it's cost certainty at least.
Right. Yeah, so Farabee's still 2028. Frost is a UFA or RFA in 25-26, and I'm sure
whatever the number is, the Flames can afford to pay it.
Yeah, they will pay the nice man, as you like to say.
Yeah, I mean, they'll pay him because they've just acquired him. They're going to, whatever the nice man in the office offers, I think he'll take. I mean, let's be honest. I think Frost is on a bit of a down season. So is Farabee. So you're not going to get maximum value out of either guy right now, and that's okay. But I would imagine Frost gets about $4 million from the Flames on probably a 3-year deal, maybe 4-year deal, and I think that's perfectly fine for where he's at.
Yeah. This is not a guy that you should be signing for 8 years. Well, I don't think you should sign any player for 8 years, in my humble opinion. But
Conroy's already said that's not what they want to be doing.
Right. So, yeah. Yeah.
And let's be honest, Frost has not looked fantastic enough that anybody's going to offer sheet him. And if they do, the Flames would match it.
Yeah, they should match it. I don't know if I disagree. I don't know if I agree with you, because I think he's in the range that a lot of teams would. He's in that middle tier that I think if I was in the offer sheet game, I would consider.
I'm just thinking that for a lot of teams, they could use those picks to go out and acquire a similar asset.
That's true. I see your point, but I could, I do think it would be smarter for the Flames to not linger on this, a la Edmonton and Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg, and get this done as quickly as possible.
Well, if you look at a lot of guys they brought in last year, like Mirmanov, I mean, that deal was done very quickly. I think, if I'm Frost, I don't want to sign yet because I have no idea who these guys are and what they're about. But I think that the Flames will get this done, I think, before he hits the UFA market.
Yeah, before July 1st. I mean, they don't need to get it done today, but
While we're on this trade, can we now talk about the trade tree of Elias Lindholm?
Yes, it is quite a trade tree. and as a guy that has been a known Elias Lindholm supporter, I will give Craig Conroy all the credit in the world for how this has been handled. But you go ahead with this.
So at this point, the Flames have moved out Elias Lindholm, Jakob Pelletier, a 2nd-round pick, and a 7th-round pick. They brought in Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee, Matvei Gradin, Luke Misa, Hunter Brustevich, Eric Jameson, and Yoni Yermo. It's a hell of a return.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Like, and it's some now, some later. There's nobody in there that is your franchise, excuse me, your franchise player necessarily, or you're going to build around.
But I would argue they didn't move out a franchise player either.
No, but they probably, this was the guy they were going to get the most for, right? Exactly. Elias Lindholm. This was the centerpiece that you were going to make the meat of your deal, your team is going to be around this, and I think that they've done very well on that.
Yeah, I think Brustevich, I think potentially Misa, I think Frost, I think Farabee, they're all guys that'll be in this organization for a long time as contributors.
Yeah, and they drafted very well last year. I think let's not forget that as well, because I mean, wasn't only the Zane Parekh pick. Of course, you got the Gradin pick, who's scoring, and Andrew Basha is a guy that I'm very intrigued about. I think he's going to be a guy to watch out for with the Flames. I love his physicality. It may take him a little while to get in, but so I mean, I know a lot of people are talking about Luke Misa as well. So they've done very well. They've built a good foundation. And this is why I push back with a lot of people with Craig Conroy hasn't done a good job. I think he's done an amazing job considering what he has been put in. And some trades are not going to work out, but I think everything here has worked out. I mean, they've got New Jersey's first, they've got Vegas's first. They probably will. If they don't have Montreal's first, they're going to have Florida's first. So they potentially could have 3 first-round picks in this draft.
Yep.
So, So I think ultimately, this is a win for the Flames in terms of like they've improved their team. And as much as there is a debate online about the tankathon or what it like long term and all of this, I think Conroy read the room, and this room, whether you think it's because of Dustin Wolf only or not, this team is in a playoff position and is fighting for a playoff spot. They're actually in the playoff spot despite the loss last night to Detroit. So, and they have the win percentage advantage over the Canucks. They deserved a boost. And I give Conroy full credit for how this has all been handled. I think well done.
Yeah, so do I. And I think they deserved a boost, but I also would have been upset if the Flames went out and just rented that boost. I love this deal because you're bringing in a 24 and a 25-year-old who you're bringing them in early enough. They're not just, coming in at the end of the season, don't have time to get acquainted with this team. You bring them in early, you're going to integrate them into the team. And these will be guys that'll be here for, 2, 3, 4 years. Like, if they would have just said, yeah, we need a boost. Okay, we got a 34-year-old. There you go. I would have been upset.
But I don't think that it was ever I think Craig Conroy was sticking to his convictions all along.
I think you're right, but I think fans wish that he would have, right? Fans wanted to build for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that you still were. I think you're still thinking long term and you're still building for the future. Like, it's not it would suck if the Flames don't make the playoffs, but it's not horrendous that the Flames don't make the playoffs, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like
I mean, the Flames were never destined for the playoffs at the beginning of the year. So if they do, it's a bonus. If not, they've achieved as expected.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now, let's look at what the Flames lost. And I guess we start with Kuzmenko. I got to be honest with you. I think this is the thing that is just fascinating by me is when I first heard this, Dan, I thought, we'll get a late round pick for Andrei Kuzmenko. I wasn't expecting a Frost or Farabee.
Well, and I think even 2 weeks ago, Kevin, you would have had to pay somebody to take Kuzmenko.
Yeah. You would have had to give up a pick as a sweetener for sure. I think, you know what? Wonderful. I know he's got a smile. And I think him and Matvei Michkov are going to be a good combination in some ways. But I also think that I think he needed some AHL work. I think I don't think I think he's not NHL ready. I don't think he understands. I don't think his hockey IQ is at an NHL level. That's kind of where I'm at with Kuzmenko.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think he was Vancouver tried this experiment and brought him in. I don't think he's NHL ready as a full-timer. I think he needs some time either in the AHL or, going back to Russia. I don't think the Flames would have re-signed him because I don't think he's ready for that. So really, to me, I mean, you're giving up let's call it a free asset to an asset that really hasn't been all that good for the Flames. That's a free asset going to Philly. You take that any time, but I don't think that you will see Kuzmenko in the NHL next year.
You know what was interesting is I was reading some Flyers stuff, and apparently they were going to be in on Kuzmenko next year. They were looking at bringing him in.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're looking at it, but I think the biggest thing with him is going to be the dollar value, right? He's making $5 million. He makes nowhere near that next year. If you're willing to play for $1 million, sure, we'll look at you. But if he's going to pay for $1 million, I think he'd rather go back to Russia.
Yeah, or it's a PTO for me.
Could be, yeah. But I mean, I think he looked great when he was over in Russia. He played well over there. Like, I think he'll probably be a bigger star. Would you rather go over there and be a first liner or stay here and be a third liner? I don't know.
Well, he likes to score goals. I don't think he likes when things were easy down the stretch here for the Flames last year, he was scoring goals. But when it got tough for him.
Yep.
So I think that's the challenge. Jakob Pelletier is interesting because I think he will find out who he is in Philadelphia. I think he took a lot of steps during the season with the Flames. I think he will take further steps. I think he's mid-6 at best forward, but I think he'll be a pesty. I wonder if at the end of the day we look. I'll just compare him to Martin Pospisil for a second. I wonder if he becomes a more effective Martin Pospisil or a more consistent Martin Pospisil.
I don't think he has the grit that Pospisil does.
I'm wondering where we'll get into Pospisil in a moment, but
I think that we all like Pelletier. I mean, a lot of people I think overvalue your team's first round picks, which he was. I think he's great, but I think that the two guys they got have higher upside than you'll ever see with Pelletier. And I also think that Pelletier, if you're going to make something out of him, having him work with the drill sergeant that is Tortorella, you'll really see what he's got.
He kind of was more effective with Sutter than Huska, though, I would argue. So I wonder.
Do you think that Tortorella will know his number? Because remember that thing with Daryl is who's that guy? What was his number?
Yes, I think Torts will know his number. I do. Yeah. But ultimately, but you know what? In spite of all that, Dan, he played more under Sutter than he did with Huska. His ice time was higher, but he. I don't think I don't see him as a goal scorer. And that's kind of the one thing that concerns me, but
I think he's too small to be the Marty Pospisil-like pest.
But I also think he can be an intelligent pest. Where I think with Pospisil, he's not when he was pesky, and he hasn't really been pesky the last little while, but when he was pesky, he wasn't always intelligent about it. I think Pelletier can be smart about it.
Yeah, I think he can too, but I don't know that he's got that build to be that full time. I think he's kind of your really fast moving number 3, the guy that you don't want to send in the corner to get the puck, which I think you do with Posso. I think with Pelletier's shoulders, I don't know I'd want him in that, position either until they're still 100%. But I think he's the guy that, you put in front of the net. He digs for the puck. He's the guy that you're digging for rebounds. I think he's a great third line guy, but I just don't know that at this point, I don't know those upsides much more than your kind of three wing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's totally fair. I mean, ultimately, the weapon that Flyers get here out of here is cap space, right? So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, for this year, it's kind of a wash because the Farabee contract is the same as the Kuzmenko contract, but you get out a long-term deal. And it's been said that they wanted out of that and to free up some cap space long-term because they want to go big game hunting in the summer.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's that part of it. Now, of course, the line combinations is an interesting conversation here. So last night it was Kadri, Huberdeau, Farabee, Backlund, Coleman, Coronado. You had Morgan Frost between Pospisil and Sharon Govich, and then you had Bishop, Lundberg, and Klapka. Also, just as a side note, I do think that the way that Adam Klapka is coming along helped solidify allowed you to trade Jakob Pelletier because he's got that size. Yeah, he's got some size, and I think he's just willing to learn. I mean, I think he's more effective at what Walker Duehr was supposed to do than Walker Duehr was.
Yeah, now Walker Duehr's in San Jose.
Yeah. Yeah, which is kind of amazing. But I mean, I guess everybody was surprised that someone claimed him, but if you see something, you see something, and San Jose doesn't have a lot of bodies.
And the thing to remember with claiming a guy off waivers is you have to keep them on your NHL team because if you waive them again, they get optioned back to their original teams. You can't just bring them in and send them down. And he's playing on the third line in San Jose. So, I think he's with Dellandrea and Luke Kunin, two, I'd say, decent NHLers. So we'll see if they can make something out of them.
Yeah. All the best to Walker Duehr. So I guess we're in the pre-Zari phase of this. We expect Connor Zary will probably be back after the Four Nations. So let's start here. Do you want to go with the four centers, Kadri, Backlund, Frost, Zary? Or do you want Zary or do you want to go Zary on the wing with Morgan Frost?
I want to go with the four natural centers right now. Kadri, Backlund, Frost, Rooney.
Right. Okay.
I think having guys like Sharon Govich and Zary that can jump in at center is important, but I don't think either one of them should be full-time centers.
I agree with you. So kind of, I think you go with. I think I would go with a Frost, Zary, Sharon Govich line, and then Rooney, Lomberg, Klapka until you can find an upgrade on that fourth line center, which I do think. I think the Flames are exploring that I think the Flames are going to explore that.
I think if that's going to come, it's going to be by salary retention.
Yeah,
I think they'll take somebody's garbage, and that'll be your fourth line center.
I think that will be someone that will be a little older too. That I wouldn't be surprised if that is a 30 or over player.
For sure. Yeah, I think you get someone's 32, 33-year-old overpaid center. They just need to move out to get some money in. You put that guy there, and you say goodbye to him at the end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. Sort of a quiet rental.
Or even if he's got to be there next year, that's fine. I mean, you've got the money for it.
Yeah. Yeah. A year and a half. It's not.
I think that there's something to be said about bringing a veteran guy in with another year, as long as you've got a center then.
Yeah. Just on a side note, were you surprised the Flames didn't claim Derek Ryan?
No.
I wasn't either, but I could see why people thought it. But he's 38.
Yeah, he's 38. I don't know. He's we've gone through this. Like, it's come and it's gone, and I don't know. He's been here. We've seen what he has. I don't know that I would do it again.
I like the one thing. I mean, I think the Oilers I still think the bottom six is a weakness for the Oilers. Like that bottom six forward group, just I still think is a problem for the Oilers. And if you're not cracking that, I would be concerned. That to me doesn't sit right. The one guy I wonder if he ends up on waivers again. I think the Flames will jump on Cole Schwindt.
Well, if he's put on waivers again, the Flames get him automatically because, again, he was claimed by the Flames. So if he's put on waivers, he'd be optioned back to the Flames first.
Yeah. Yeah. But if that happens,
Brandon Saad just signed there, so they're going to need to move a forward out of the Vegas lineup. So I could totally see it being Schwindt.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So, and then I guess the other part of this, did you like Kadri, Huberdeau, Farabee together, or would you try something else, or would you just keep with this and see how it goes, or would you make any changes? Or
I think it was fine. I mean, I think that really your first line right now should be Huberdeau, Kadri, Coronado. I think just because they know each other, I still think that we should try Frost and Farabee together and see what we get there. Like right now, I'm kind of thinking put Coronado on the first line with Huberdeau, Kadri. You've got Backlund, Coleman, who I don't want to break up. I don't know who you put there. I don't think it's Farabee or Frost. Maybe Postel. I'm not sure. And then I would go Farabee, Frost, Sharon Govich as a line. I think if you wait till after the Four Nations, you could do Coleman, Backlund, Zari. You could do Frost, Farabee, Sharon Govich, or it could be Zari and Sharon Govich swapped. I think either one would work. And then you put Postel, Lomberg, Klapka on the line.
And Postel as the center?
I would try one of the other guys at center there, but I think you don't take any of those guys out of lineup, and that's the hard part. Like somebody's got to come out of lineup for Zari to come back in.
I think it's time for Pospisil to have a seat. I just don't think he's been I don't think he's been effective.
I think they've been playing him too high in the lineup. Like he was on the first line for a while. I don't think that's where he is, and I think that's why he's not effective.
I think I think right now I would like to see him on the fourth line, I think, when Zary gets back. So I think that happens. But I just haven't seen the bite for him for most of the year. Did he score? Okay, let's look back. He scored against Washington, right? Was it Washington or Anaheim he scored?
One of the two. I'd have to go back and look.
But that was the first goal in a while. I just don't think he's been really effective. And I know that everybody has been on Sharon Govich, but I think Sharon Govich has shown more of an effort than Pospisil. Like, I don't feel like Pospisil is playing. I don't see Pospisil going into the corners along the boards much. Like, I just don't see an effective guy right now. For what he's
I think that to me they're trying to get Pospisil to do things he's not, and I think putting him on a fourth line, even if you had to take Klapka out, having say Pospisil, Lomberg, Rooney, I think you can get Pospisil back to what Pospisil is.
Yeah, I like the idea of Lomberg and Pospisil together because I think that they can. I think they would work very well together.
And while we didn't like Pospisil at center, I think at limited fourth line minutes, he could be a center if you need him to. I think that any of those guys could be in limited fourth line minutes.
Fair.
I think that Lomberg is the best hockey player of all of them. As weird as that is to say, I'd probably put him there.
Yeah, you're convincing me. What you're telling me, Dan, is they need to find another center.
I mean, I'd be fine keeping Rooney there too, but somebody's got to come out.
Yeah.
Right. And if you take Pospisil out, then that's fine. That makes it easy. And then Klapka, Lomberg, Rooney stays your fourth line. I guess that works. But I don't know they want to take Pospisil out of the lineup. I think he's a young guy that they see a future with, and they want to keep him in the lineup to, build him. So as soon as you take him out of the lineup, I wonder what triggers him to go back into the lineup.
Well, there's got to be a sense of competition, though, too, right? And we're kind of excuse me. That's kind of where I'm at with that.
And remember
right?
that Clark Bishop is still on the roster too. So I mean, you could send Bishop back down, which I think you will, and maybe you have Postel and Klapka just rotate as your 13.
Do you bring back Rory Cairns?
No, not right now. I think we tried Cairns. I think he looked good. I think right now, and you and I have talked about this, the Wranglers need to be ready for a run, and they're without two of their top centers now with Cairns and Bishop. So I think, Cairns is right where he needs to be. He needs to go down for the run. I think they need to send Bishop back down as soon as they can too.
Yeah, I don't think Bishop is ready for the NHL.
No, but I don't think he ever will be. I think this is exactly what he is, right? He's your platoon guy when you need some help.
Yeah.
And, I would not be surprised if we see Kevin Rooney join them. If the Flames can bring in another centerman, I think Kevin Rooney will be on his way down as well.
Yeah. By the way, just on the Wranglers note here, all the best to the head coach who has gone through some Joe Sorella is also taking a little bit of a medical leave, I read, and Brett Sutter is taking over to coach the team for a little while here. So all the best to him. Of course,
yeah, I mean, this is crazy. They're going to have 3 head coaches in 1 year.
I know. And then you got Trent Call up in Calgary because Brad Larson's still on family leave. So.
And I wonder, and I mean, Trent Cull is the more experienced coach. Brett Sutter has never been really a coach before. Like, at what point do you have to send Trent back down and say, okay, we need a head coach there? And there's enough unemployed head coaches that I'm sure you could bring somebody in as quote unquote an associate coach for the rest of the year to fill in for Cull in the NHL.
I think what happens is after when the Four Nations break happens, I think Cull goes back to the Wranglers for.
Yeah, I think he has to. Like, Sutter just doesn't. I mean, if you want to bring in, old man Sutter, any of them, sure, because they know what they're doing. But I just don't think that Brett Sutter, hasn't been around the league long enough. You want to bring in Brent, fine. Daryl, fine. Someone who knows what they're doing, but you don't want to make your head coach a first-year coach. And I think that Trent needs to go back down because, I mean, if they want to bring in Daryl or somebody or, any unemployed coach, I know where Mike Yeo is, just a name I'm throwing out there, an old head coach.
Travis Green staff in Ottawa.
Okay. So, if you find some guy like that who just, he's hanging around and he's good for a year, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, it is kind of chaotic, and considering all that, the Wranglers continue to do very well. So, we also, I guess, should touch on. You touched on it on your podcast last week. We haven't had a chance to talk about it, but it's ridiculous to me. I guess Kevin Ball is not the star player we need to protect down, because clearly that was a very dirty hit by Jeremy Locko, and that should have been a suspension, in my opinion. And Kevin Ball is out with an upper body / probable concussion. By the way, I think the Flames miss him. His length, his skating, like Joel Hanley has been very solid, but Joel Hanley is not Kevin Ball, unfortunately.
Hanley made a lot of mistakes, I thought, against Detroit.
Yeah, it was kind of, him and Anderson were not on the same page.
No, and I mean, really, I think it takes the Flames from having 3 bona fide NHL defensemen to 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I thought Tyson Barrie looked pretty good overall.
Barry's good, but Barry's still bottom 6.
Yeah.
I don't think Miramanov's top 6 like they want him to. I think Pakal could be, but isn't there yet. Like, I think it almost sounds like a law firm at this point. It's Anderson, Weegar, and company.
I think Brandon Mahal is an NHL defenseman. He's not a top 4 NHL defenseman.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So I would say it's Anderson, Weegar, Pakal, and company. But it is interesting as we record this before the Seattle game. It's Miramonov in for Barrie, Bruni in for Bishop, and Dan Vladar is in for Dustin Wolf. And I have been a defender of Dan Vladar, Dan. I have, but he hasn't won in a month, and I think this is a must-win game for him. Like, it's like you got to get these wins here at some point. Like, yes, he's been at the back end of these back-to-backs. He's played all of them, but he's got to get a win. And this is a winnable game in Seattle.
It is.
So.
And, I think I agree with you, but I think that the Flames with, not having a lot of defense right now, I think that it's going to be tougher for him to win this one than maybe, it should be. And I think that a lot of that pressure is going to be put on the goaltender for better or for worse.
Yeah. He's got to steal a game.
Yeah. And, he needs to, but I think right now, even if you don't get the win in that one, let's be honest, Dustin Wolf didn't get the win last night either against Detroit. Like, you can't always blame it on the goaltender, right? And I think that right now with the Flames not having defense, I think you've got to look at the whole team and say, you know what, they've just got to get through this. And let's remember again, this is not a defense that was designed to go to the playoffs, right? So I think you're getting exactly what you put out there out of this defense.
Yeah. That's fair, but at the same time, that's some I've given Vladar the benefit of the doubt. Like, you do need two goalies, and I think that if it's at some point here, Vladar has to show something. That's where I'm kind of at. Because you got 3 more games this week. You've got Toronto on Tuesday. You've got the Avalanche on Thursday, and I think you've got the Kraken coming in next Saturday. I'm assuming you're playing Dustin Wolf Toronto. I'm assuming you're playing Dustin Wolf Colorado. Maybe you get one more start with Vladar against Seattle on Saturday, but this is probably his last shot with the Flames before the Four Nations, right?
Yeah.
And this is probably the time that I would think that if you're going to trade Dan Vladar, it's between February 12th and March 7th, it's going to happen.
Do you think he gets traded?
What has he done to stick around? Like, that's my counteract.
But I think the counter argument from another GM, what has he done to make me want to acquire him?
Yeah.
I can see a team taking a shot at him in the offseason, but what has he done to want me to give up an asset for him?
Like, I think the problem that here we are with the Wranglers issue on this is I don't think that you should call up Devin Cooley because you need him, right? You need him in with the Wranglers. But at the same time, I think that there's a legitimate argument that Devin Cooley deserves a shot in the NHL.
Yeah, I think you're right, but does that shot have to be this year?
No,
you could easily call Cooley up on a day the Wranglers not playing.
Yeah, you could do what Seeloff's. You could do what the Canucks have been doing with Seeloff's, kind of transferring him from Vancouver to Abbotsford on a bus, like just paper transaction. You could do that.
Yeah, if I look here at the schedules, even for the next month, there's some games here when, there's a couple days when, the Wranglers are playing the Flames are not, and vice versa. Like, you could bring them up for a game and see what you've got. But right now, why not just keep Vladar as your backup?
Well, I guess the other option would be you find another veteran backup that is not Vladar.
And I think if you really wanted to, you could probably take one in a deal. But, I don't think this is a problem they have to solve now. Vladar's a UFA at the end of the year. I would just keep him. I don't think you're going to get much more than a 5th for him or even a 4th at this point. Keep him. And, deal with it in the offseason.
Yeah.
If I'm another GM, if I thought Colorado could have been in on him because they needed goalies. They've solved that problem. When I look around the league right now, I don't see a team that's going to say, you know what, this guy's look terrible, but we still need a goalie bad enough. Well, I wouldn't say terrible, but worse than our guys. But we think our guys are so bad we need that upgrade.
Yeah.
I think, to me, Vladar's looking like a backup goaltender. And that's what he is for this team. So I don't see the urgent need to get him out of town.
Yeah, I just think you need wins from your backup, though. And he hasn't provided that part of it.
But how many, let's be honest, Calgary's a rebuilding team. Show me a rebuilding team that's getting a lot of wins from their backups.
Probably none, but at the same time, you're now at the point where I think you're going to be playing Dustin Wolf 75% of the time. He can't win all of these games. I mean, like,
But does he need to win all these games?
not necessarily, but you do like the one like here's the kind of the struggle here is I don't know if you want to. It's going to be interesting to see what happens after the Four Nations with Dustin Wolf, because I mean the games are going to get a little bit more intense. And I'm not saying that Dustin Wolf's not going to respond to it, but I do think that there's going to be a learning curve for him. And so I do think, like, all I'm saying is they need a little more from Vladar to support Dustin Wolf. That if they need to give Wolf a little bit of a break, which is entirely possible, because he's a first year full-time goalie. If they can get a couple of found money wins from Dan Vladar, I think it helps them in the long run.
Sure. I don't disagree, but I don't know that moving him out solves that problem.
Not unless you get somebody else back in. No.
And again, who are you going to if it's not Cooley, which I agree, I don't think it should be. Who is it?
I'll have to examine that situation further, right? But
Vitek Vanacek is the backup in for the Sharks this year. 14 games played, 3 wins, 0 SOs, and an 8.85 save percentage. For Vladar, 21 games, 6 wins, 2 shutouts, and 3.12 GAA, 8.86 GAA, or 8.86 save percent. So, I mean, he's doing better than, let's say, other rebuilding backups.
Fair.
And so, and I think what you're talking about too, Kevin, depends on, again, what we think these Flames are. If the Flames are going to run for the cup, sure, I think that or even for the first round of the playoffs, sure, I think they need a better backup. If the team needs to give Wolf a rest and they put Vladar in and they fall short, is that a failure?
No.
So then why upgrade?
The reason you upgrade is because at some point do you end up losing confidence in playing Vladar, and then you end up overplaying Wolf. That's the one.
I think if you lose that much confidence, send Vladar down and bring Cooley up.
Okay.
That's what I would say. Like I'm looking around at other options. I don't know what other options, you would get from another team that would be better than Vladar. Is there a certain name you're thinking of?
Not off the top of my head.
I mean, I'm kind of looking at third goaltenders for other teams that might want Vladar. And so I'm kind of looking at like playoff teams, if you will, right? Guys that might say, okay, we need another guy for the playoffs. Let's just look at, say, the top 5 teams here. So Washington's 3 goalies. Do you think it's fair to say you're probably not getting an NHL goalie? You're probably getting somebody's ECHL goalie.
Well,
or AHL goalie.
I think, the only guy that pops in my head is if Linus Ullmark comes back in Ottawa, it's Miramailan there, because you're going to Ullmark Forsberg. Then maybe that guy.
Maybe, but I think there'd be does he have to clear waivers? I don't think he does.
No, but
so just send him down. Like, I don't know Ottawa would want to move that asset.
No, I agree with you.
So if I look at, say, the extra goaltenders in Washington, Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson. Logan Thompson's got 4 more years at almost $6 million. I'm not touching that. So Charlie Lindgren at 31, is that a better option? I don't know.
That's probably too expensive for what you're looking for. That's probably this is, I guess, the conclusion of this. It would be you're upgrading the backup position in the off season.
Yeah.
You're probably not bringing back Vladar, but I'm just kind of hoping Vladar can steal a win or two down the stretch here to help.
I think if the Flames wanted to upgrade that position and they're willing to pay for it, they would have grabbed Grubauer.
Yeah, maybe.
Right? I mean, he's got 3 years left, so he's expensive. But I think that would have been the logical upgrade, and then find a way to package him out of town later or send him down to the farm. You got the money to do it. That's where he's going to be now. But I don't see the Flames expending an asset, because I don't think you're going to be able to trade Vladar 1-for-1 with somebody.
No.
So I don't see the Flames expending an asset to upgrade their backup position in a year that they're rebuilding.
Yeah. I mean, they don't need, that's an area they don't need to overspend on either.
No.
But
if somebody's willing to take Vladar, if somebody calls you and says, we like Dan Vladar, we want to take him, or somebody gets an injury, I still think there's some value in Vladar if somebody wants him. But if you're out shopping him around, I don't think you get much for him.
Yeah. I think my frustration for just because I don't think Vladar has been bad. I thought he was bad against Winnipeg. I thought that was a game that they should have won.
And that's fair, but I think that, again, to me, how often do we say that about any team's backups? Vancouver's, Calgary's, anybody's. Backups are backups for a reason. And I think often they are, it is a bit of a liability in a way when you put them in.
Yeah. All right. Let's one other thing I wanted to chat about here is a report from Elliotte Friedman that Rasmus Andersson, Nazem Kadri, and Mackenzie Weegar are not available for trade right now. First of all, that doesn't surprise me either. I think everyone was expecting that, and I think that's a good sign that Rasmus, at this point, is on the direction to signing up a contract with the Flames and a contract extension with the Flames when they can start that on July 1st. But I think ultimately the conclusion that we can come with all of this is I still think the plan is the plan. I don't think that they've deviated from everything. This is still a rebuilding team. Even if with Morgan Frost, this is not a great group of centers. Even with Joel Farabee, it's not a great group of forwards. They still need to improve and draft and all of that. And they still need work on a number of different areas. I don't think, and I think even Craig Conroy, when Kevin Biak, I don't know if you saw the first intermission last night, Dan, when Kevin Biak said, is Dustin Wolf your next Mika Kiprusoff? And Conroy said he's on his way, but he didn't say yes. I think that this team is intelligent enough to know exactly where they're at. And I don't think I don't think that they're going to be fooling themselves even with a playoff, getting into the playoffs, that this team is better. This is not the 2020 Montreal Canadiens, or they fooled themselves into believing that they were a better team than they were. And then,
I agree with you. And I don't think there's many other trades in the Farabee Frost mold you can make right now.
No,
right? Where you're trading somebody and still helping yourself mid-season.
Yeah. I think that they will be looking for another impact forward in the offseason. And I think that they will probably try to do that more likely through trade than free agency. And I'll toss this out here, Dan. I would not be surprised if they consider an offer sheet. They will be
offer sheet.
I have to, again, let me examine that in the future, because that just went into my brain. But I think there might be some options out there.
Maybe, I mean, for the number of, I guess depends who you're looking at, but I don't know. I'm not sure it'd be worth it. I'm just looking at a report here from Sportsnet with who they think are the top 12 RFAs. So one of them is Evan Bouchard.
No.
Noah Dobson.
Yes, I would consider it.
Wyatt Johnson.
100% I would consider it.
Luke Hughes.
Yes.
JJ Peterka.
Maybe.
Fabian Zetterlund.
Yes.
Mason McTavish.
Yes.
Andrei Miller. He's not going to make it, but he's in the list.
Why? You think did the Rangers extend him?
I think he'll either get extended or traded.
Fair.
Matthew Nyes.
Oh, the Leafs better sign him. If the Leafs don't extend Nyes, Devin is going to lose it.
Lucas Dostal.
No, because you got Dustin Wolf, right?
And Marco Rossi.
I
think they could offer sheet these guys. My only thing is I don't think you're going to find another situation like Edmonton last year where you're going to offer sheet somebody a fair value and the team can't afford to match it. And I don't want the Flames overpaying for any of these guys. So while they might offer sheet them, I'm not sure who you'd offer sheet that you wouldn't get a match for.
Yeah.
I think all those names there, the teams would probably match them.
Yeah, I still think the Flames need to be intelligent about what they're doing. And even with the cap going up, they don't need to overspend on anything. I still think you should stick. I think they need to stick to the plan.
Yeah, and I think you're going to want a good portion of your kind of cap increase to eventually go to Wolf. Like, you're going to have to budget for a big increase for Wolf in the next couple of years.
You have to pay Zeri, Coronado, and Wolf.
Yep.
And,
and if you want Andersson to stick around, you're going to have to give him a raise too.
Yep. So those 4 guys you need to pay already before you.
Frost, you're probably going to be paying a big raise to. I mean, he's making 2.1. You'll probably double that in the next contract.
As much as the cap is going up, it can fill your bucket really quickly.
It sure can. Yeah. And I think a lot of teams will say, oh, we've got the money now. We'll give so-and-so more money. And then they're going to, regret it later on.
And I also think that you have to be intelligent enough to not overreach these players and give them I'm just not a fan of 8-year contracts overall. I think that's the problem.
I agree. But Connor has already said he's not going to do that.
Yeah. Like even a Josh Norris or a Dylan Cousins. And that's why sort of my hesitation with the Flames getting in on Dylan Cousins is I think he's a talented guy, but you've got him for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And is that the guy you want to have your hat stuck for 6 years? Even with Pettersson, right? I understand that there's Flame fans that want Pettersson.
I think that by the time the Flames rebuild is done, which I think will be less than 6 years, by the time they're competitive again, you would be regretting that deal.
Yeah. You still need to be smart about it.
You do. So, I mean, okay, let's look at contracts that are expiring then. I mean, assuming that these deals need to be done in the next couple of years. Backlund's up at the end of next year. Do you think he comes back and gets a raise?
I think that they're going to try to encourage Michael Backlund to be part of the front office of the Flames.
So you think he retires at that point?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you've got 4.5
what
available.
What actually happened is, okay, I could see Backlund saying, okay, if you want me back to the front office, you go trade me somewhere where I can get a cup.
Yeah, and I think fans would be totally okay with that. The Jerome McGinley move.
Yeah.
Frost, let's say Frost about $4 million. Is that reasonable?
Yeah.
Blomberg's up at the end of next year. Does he get a raise?
Yes, I would give him a little bit of a raise.
I don't think Blomberg gets anywhere near $2 million anywhere else. I think even if you offer him the same deal, he'd take it.
Yeah. I think this is also a guy that I could see sticking around the organization for a long time in other capacities.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you just kind of offer him what you need to keep him around because he wants to be here.
Yeah.
Kevin Rooney, does he come back at 1.3, which is what he's making now?
No.
And then Marty Postel's up at the end of next year. He's making $1 million. I'd say even if you double that for him, you're doing okay.
I could see Pospisil being a trade chip too.
I could, yep. Coronado making less than $1 million. I think you're going to have to offer him about $5 million.
Yeah.
Zari probably in the same range. Klapka right now $700,000. He's an RFA at the end of this year. I think he'll go up to at least $1 million.
Yeah,
and then
LJ deal. I could.
And then next year you've got Andersson at 4.5. I mean, that'll probably have to jump to 7 or 8 to keep him around. So that'll be a big jump. Braden Pakal less than 1.2 million now. I think that he's on a 3-year now, so he'll be fine. I think you're going to need to pay Kevin Ball quite a bit more. He's at 1.0.
Yeah.
And then Dan Vladar is 2.2. I don't think you're going any higher than that. Dustin Wolf's at 800,000. Like, I think you've got some players here that you're going to be sucking up quite a bit of money to re-sign.
Yeah.
You know, so while the Flames have that space, I don't want them to go out and even bring in, you know, a big money for more than a year or two that would hamper some of those deals.
Let me ask you one other question, just as a
Sure.
theory. Could you see, is there now a world with Jonathan Huberdeau playing the way he is there now a world that you could see him being traded?
No, just because of the length of that deal.
Yeah, they would have to eat.
And to me, like, I don't know any team that would want to even take that at half for, you know, the length of it.
If he was a J.T.Miller type, I could see it, but I don't see that with a Huberdeau. But
And also, Huberdeau's had one good year. Like, if I was going to make that deal, I'd say show me you can do it again next year.
Yeah.
Right? He's 31. You've got that deal signed through, 31. Like, you know, you've got him signed almost till he's 40. Even at 5.5, I wouldn't want to take that on as a GM. I'm going to let Calgary get stuck with that. Maybe I take him his last year, but I don't think that anyone's going to say even at 5.5, I couldn't do better.
That's true. But I do think, at least the way that he's played, I think that it moved a bit more this way to a possibility than it is. It's still tough to do.
I agree. Yeah. And also, if you move that deal out, how are you going to meet salary floor in Calgary?
Yeah. Yeah. So ultimately, I think I do agree with you. The Flames need to prioritize, but I mean, I think that that allows them to intelligently upgrade this team.
I agree. Yep. And I think that you've got to look at bringing these guys you have in first and what that's going to cost before you go out and, you know, look at bringing in outside pieces. Yeah. And remember that Kirkland will be back next year too. Like, I think he will get a long look at the NHL. So there's another guy that's going to probably be on your NHL roster. Like, you know, you've got to be very cautious bringing in at least a forward. I think they can definitely bring in a defenseman or two, but I think they've got to be very cautious bringing in another forward, because who are you going to displace?
Yeah. And then there's the Anthony Mantha question.
Let me put this out there. If you want to sign a forward like Mantha next year, that kind of guy on a show me 1 year, what do you think the likelihood is that Taylor Hall would come home for a year and sign a show me contract?
I think his show me is this playoff run in Carolina.
Yep. I think you're right. And if it doesn't turn out, I could totally see that being a guy who would call the Flames and say, hey, I'm willing to come in. I'm from Calgary. I'm willing to come in, you know, on a cheaper deal.
Yeah. Just on that, we just missed this. This is a interesting trade, the whole Rantanen Hall Necas situation. And I heard Matt's argument for the Chicago part. I understand where he's coming from in terms of Chicago, but I still think a third round pick was too low. I still would have considered a second. Like, I still thought that was a little low, and I understand that you're trying to set yourself up for something, which is fine, but third seemed a little low. The other thing is I just listening to Colorado, Dan, it kind of reminds
me. So the third in which deal? The Rantanen deal?
The Chicago got back to retain the 50% for Rantanen.
Yeah, and I'm sure they wanted a second, and, you know, maybe they were told, you know what, we'll get someone else to do it. Like, you know, there's other players that could have been put in there.
Yeah, I guess so, but
I mean, for all we know, they could have called Calgary and said, hey, would you guys retain it? We would take, you know, Kuzmenko for doing it.
And they obviously had some other things in mind.
Well, I don't know if Calgary did with Kuzmenko at the time, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a couple different brokers that it's like, who's going to give us the cheapest brokerage here?
Yeah.
I also think that, you know, you're taking on, I mean, you know, Hall is not cheap. So while you're retaining, you're still giving up a decent player who's got, you know, decent term to him too. Like, it's not just the third.
Yeah, I know. I think that from Chicago's perspective, I would have tried to fight for that second a lot hard. I would have fought for the second.
And we don't know they didn't.
Yeah, that's fair. No, that's totally fair. But from the Colorado side, doesn't this feel a little bit like Matthew Tkachuk?
Yep, but I think being in season, it's even more impactful for them.
Like that was I really like Martin Necas. Don't get me wrong. I think both teams came out really well on this, but I also just felt like the gut punch come out of Colorado, which I thought was really interesting. It is. I think that Four Nations break is going to have to be some reset because that felt like Matthew Tkachuk leaving Calgary and Johnny.
I was surprised this got done. I mean, I understand that they couldn't re-sign him, but I was surprised it got done this early. I thought this would be a deadline move, if not an off-season move.
Well, he's a UFA, right? So you would have had to have, if you weren't going to sign him, if you knew you weren't going to sign him, but apparently he said that he would have taken less than McKinnon.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm not sure. Like, I think there's something else going on here that we haven't seen.
Yeah. I think there's still another domino to fall in Colorado, but it was a gut punch.
And it makes me wonder who else might ask to get out or who might not want to go to Colorado because of it.
Yeah, that will be a fascinating.
Like, again, I think there's something behind the scenes, Kevin, that we're not aware of. For this to have happened this early, if he is indeed willing to take less, I think that there's sort of like, we all know what went on in Vancouver. I think there might be something going on behind the scenes we just didn't hear about or see.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Vancouver, let's go there. It has been a very dramatic year in Vancouver with the whole J.T.Miller, Elias Pettersson situation. And it finally did resolve with J.T.Miller being traded, which was originally the idea, apparently, when he was supposed to be scratched from the Oilers game a couple of weeks ago. The report was that J.T.Miller was on his way to the Rangers. And then with the whole Mikko Rantanen trade, there was talk that J.T.Miller and Elias Pettersson and Vancouver was in and on that situation. But it turned out last Friday that J.T.Miller ended up in New York. He goes with Eric Brandstrom and an unsigned Jackson Dorrington for Philip Hedl, Victor Mancini, and a conditional first-round pick from the Rangers. Now, the Canucks then take that first-round pick from the Rangers and do the Philip Hronek. They trade that first-round pick along with Vincent Desharnais and Danton Heinen to Pittsburgh. They get Drew O'Connor, and they also trade Melvin Firstrom, which was their first pick in 2024, but a third-round pick, for Drew O'Connor and Marcus Pettersson. So I've not received any word yet of when the Canucks are Vancouver's changing their name to the Petterssons yet. No word on that, Dan, not yet. So now you've got, that's a significant shakeup in Vancouver without question, which may be the opposite of Colorado. It might provide some actual relief to the team that has been dealing with this tension all along with Miller and Pettersson. Let's kind of point at this from two different directions here. What did you overall think of the move?
Like both together?
Yeah, combine everything.
I think I don't think Vancouver got equal in return, but I didn't think they were going to. Asking a team to take on that long J.T. Miller deal, I knew that Vancouver would have to pay to do that essentially, and they did. And I mean, Miller's gone. I like Cheadle. I think that's a good piece to get back. The conditional first, I think, is good. I mean, I don't know how high it'll be, but it feels
a 13 protected pick from the Rangers. That if they don't use it this year, it's an unprotected pick next year.
Yeah, and then a pick went back to the Penguins, right?
The Rangers pick went to the Penguins.
I see. Okay, so like, I like Cheadle, but it just felt like kind of everything else that came back was just filling holes. Like Vincent Desharnais, Den and Heinen, these are guys that have been around the league for a while, and they're just kind of, middle lineup guys.
Yeah.
But if it's what you feel you need to do, and if he was as disruptive as some people are making it sound like he is, then I guess, that's fine. Move him out. Good. And hopefully you can move on without him. I look at it sort of like the Calgary deal, sort of like you were saying with Tkachuk, but I think that almost like Calgary did last year with their disruptive pieces, get him out of there and the whole team be better for it.
Yeah, build the team like with Calgary doing the idea was you want to be here. We want players to be here. If you don't want to be here, we have to move you out. All the best to you. Good luck.
Pretty much. And yes, we might lose an on-ice piece that's useful, but we're going to have a better, more cohesive locker room because of it. So, I think that they're willing to kind of take that hit and, kind of go, okay, we lost a piece, but we're going to be a better team because of it.
Yeah. Now, just from my perspective, the two key pieces in this deal isn't necessarily the pieces that they acquired. It's they get the play from Pettersson that they are expecting, that him get back to that point per game pace that he was on before, and then his game comes back, and that salary cap room helps them as well, right? And that allows them to do some other things. And they still have the decision to make with Brock Besser, and I think I'm getting the sense that the decision is that they're going to move on from Brock Besser, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's a trade that happens before the deadline. So you're kind of in a bit of a reshape here. A reshape.
Do you think they're going to move on from Besser by the deadline?
Well, I think he's going to want a lengthier deal than the Canucks are willing to give him. I think if he wanted a 2 to 3 year deal, I think, you could probably discuss it, but I think he wants 8, and maybe there's a part of me that would just kind of half wonders if probably a change of scenery is Brock probably needs a change of scenery just because of everything that has happened here.
Do you think that losing both Miller and Besser in one season will keep them out of the playoffs?
Well, it's coming down to
not just this year, but I think that they had a great rebuilding year last year. Do you think this? Maybe I should say it this way: do you think this steps them backwards in their progress?
I'm not sure, and here's why I'm not sure. You still have Quinn Hughes, who is playing at a unbelievable. He's in an MVP conversation this year. If they can get Thatcher Demko back to Thatcher Demko ways, their goaltending is good enough that they are a playoff team and could still cause some. And I mean, there's a lot of what ifs here. If you can get PD back, you can get Demko back, you're still a pretty good team that I would argue is still better than Calgary and LA overall, even with the Flames moves of Frost and Farabee. I still would put the Canucks ahead of.
And I guess you will get something for Besser too. It's not like you're just subtracting.
No, exactly. You'll get a first round pick. You'll get a prospect. You'll get something that you could use. If they don't make the playoffs this year, they don't make the playoffs this year. I mean, I think the one that becomes a little bit more interesting depending on how well Pettersson plays, because if he doesn't get back to where they need him to be, they've got till July 1st because his no move kicks in on July 1st. So you have to make the decision of whether you keep him or not. And that becomes a fascinating question. And there's some people here that are wondering about, what do you do? How do you appease Quinn Hughes at this point? Because you've got 2 more years with him. Does he want to stick around after all of this? Which I think is a far, far too early of a conversation to have at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know as much about what's going on that team behind the scenes as you probably do, because you guys watch them far closer. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's too early to look at that, and I wonder too if, sort of like we saw in Calgary, it was reported there was two camps. Now that Miller's gone, was it just Miller versus Pettersson, or was there a Miller camp of other guys? They're also going to be kind of upset now, and are you going to have to move more names out?
I think from what I'm gathering this is my working theory. Something happened in November that forced Miller to take a leave. I think everybody in this organization has been absolutely exhausted with the situation. And I think it just came to a head this year, and it was unattainable to the point that they had to move on from one or the other. And they had to take the short-term pain for the long-term gain. Now, if Philip is able to play well, I think that's a great addition. The concern is unfortunately he's had, I think, 4 concussions, unfortunately. So I hope, because I mean, nobody wants the concussion situation. Nobody wants, like, it's brutal for whatever hockey player it is, right? So, just from
I mean, I like him as a player when he's healthy, but yeah, I worry about his long-term durability.
Yeah. And Marcus Pettersson, I think, will be a good ad. They've improved the blue line. They need to upgrade the forwards. That's kind of where I'm at on that. But I guess let's now take this from the Flames angle. What does it mean for the Flames? Do you think that this impacts the Flames in any way?
Vancouver?
The Miller shakeup here?
This year or long term or both?
Both.
Long term, I don't think it does. I mean, again, I think the Flames, for better or for worse, depending on what fans want, are still rebuilding. I don't think that you really look at other teams and how that's going to affect you yet. You just worry about you at this point. This year, I think that it could potentially make Vancouver take a step back in the standings if they can't find somebody, especially if Besser goes as well for futures. If those two guys together are moving, I think that the Flames might have one less team chasing them as closely.
Yeah.
Or, again, I mean, the Flames could take a step backwards as well, which we've talked about. If you got to play Vladar more, I think it depends on how you look at it. If you're looking at, yes, the Flames might have one less team chase them for the playoffs, great. But it might also mean that Calgary and Vancouver are racing for the bottom, 10 as well.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. And St. Louis has kind of fallen off here, but Utah's kind of coming in. Utah and St. Louis are going to be interesting because I was the one that believed that Utah or St. Louis would be grabbing that last spot. And I've been proven completely and astoundingly wrong because they've lost 4 in a row. But they could get back into this. And Utah could is hanging around too. So,
right now, I don't think the Flames should worry about anybody else and what anybody does. Just worry about yourself, worry about your rebuild. If you make it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. But, I don't really know. Right now, it's not like, they're fighting for points and they need to be in the playoffs.
No, they don't need to get into the playoffs. They really don't. But I also think the chase can help the team, especially with the young players, learn what it takes to win.
I don't disagree. I mean, if they get in or they're chasing, great. I think it's a great learning experience. But, I don't think they should worry about where Vancouver's at or react to it in any way or any other team. I mean, I think Vancouver faltering probably helps Calgary in the division, but, if it doesn't, it's not a big deal either, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of, I would rather be, in terms of rebuilding, I would rather be in this situation than a bottom 5 team. Because I think it just helps the team morale overall.
I think it helps team morale. I think it makes, doing deals like the Frost deal more enticing for a player to come in. And I think going into the offseason, it's going to, you've got guys like Kadri who probably aren't asking out because of it. I think it makes it easier to retain players when you're not in that bottom 5.
Yeah.
all the names you mentioned that Friedman said aren't out of here. I think it could be a different discussion if the Flames were in the bottom 5.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably there's probably a sale.
Yeah, or at least guys who want out. I mean, whether they're all out of here this year or not is another story. None of them are, UFAs at this point, so you might not rush to get them out of here. But then there might be more guys saying, "Hey, Connie, I want out."
Yeah. Yeah, but they're in the playoff battle as we head into the final week of the Four Nations. So whether people like it or not, that's where they're at. So, and I think full credit for everybody for putting in the battle to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the Flames are where they are because of where they're at, right? I mean, they're right where they are because they've worked hard. Whether they get in or not, we'll see. I don't know how that's going to turn out for them. We will find out, but I'm okay with, maybe what I'm trying to say is I'm okay with whatever happens as long as the Flames stay the course, which I think they will in terms of assets.
Yeah, I think the direction of the team is more important than making the playoffs.
For sure.
Yeah. Anything else we need to discuss?
I mean, I'm still waiting for somebody to explain to me how the Four Nations is best on best without Ovechkin, Malkin, Kucherov, Panarin, Draisaitl, and Pasternak there.
You can't. I can't explain that to you, but I think that. Well, I think one of the things that happened is they did say that they will be moving on the next tournament without the IIHF. So I could see them bringing in a semblance of Russia next time. Like it's,
yeah, and I guess him going back to the under 25 team and stuff like that as well.
I think it's more likely they find a way to bring. I think that it's more likely that they do the Draisaitl, Kucherov, those guys find a way for them than the under 25 gimmick. But
you also can't have a 5-team tournament. Like the answer to me would have been to have a world team, put those guys in there, but you can't have 5 teams. So I think you might have to do the under 25 to balance the teams, unless you put Czech Republic in, and then there's your 6th team. Like there's other ways to do it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very complicated situation, which with Russia, but I mean the other side of it is the rivalry with Russia, with both Canada and the States, is more intense than Sweden. I mean, it's hard to hate Sweden. It's hard to hate Finland.
But even not having the Czechs in this thing, like that doesn't make a lot of sense to me either.
Yeah. I think they needed to do something they wanted to get something off the ground. I think that there's going to be some flaws with this. And I think that this is something that they're going to build towards going forward.
I think, honestly, I wouldn't have rushed into doing this. You've got 2026 Winter Olympics next year. I would have made that the first tournament, not rushed into something, and then had something that you could work towards for 2027 or 2028 that is the best version you can put out there. To me, this just seems like a watered down World Cup. And if I was in a 4-year gap between the Olympics and I was craving hockey at it's kind of the best on best international level, sure. But I still understand why you need to do this the year for the Olympics when the NHL is going back.
Because it's about the money, Dan.
The All-Star game is making them plenty of money too. I would have just run the All-Star game again.
Yeah. I think this makes more money, Dan.
We'll see. Because you're right. They're not making money from the Olympics, right? They or not nearly as much. Let's put it that way, because it's not your tournament.
Yeah. I mean, the other question will be when do you play this tournament? Because do you legitimately, if you're the Oilers and Connor McDavid gets hurt in this tournament, are you not a little pissed off?
You are. I mean, honestly, and again, that's why I think it needs a little more thought, Kevin. I don't see the whole midseason tournament thing being viable. We're already seeing guys who don't want to be there. We saw that with the All-Star game. I think that just shutting the league down for a week or doing the bye week thing makes sense. And if you want to do a tournament, do it in the summer.
Yeah.
set your World Cup or your Four Nations Cup or whatever in July.
I kind of understand, like they probably, you could always use this Super Bowl week as sort of a bye week. I mean, going forward, because I mean, the attention for most people is going to be on the NFL starting for a lot of people Monday, right? So,
yeah, and I know we've always had, every team had a 1 week bye week, and it's sort of half the teams 1 week and half teams the other. I think why not just shut them all down at the same week? Just say, hey, we're going to take 2 weeks off. Maybe even at that point, focus on, we're going to shut things down, but we're going to play the AHL All-Star game in that week, and we'll broadcast that on the NHL to get some more eyes on young players or something like that. But I just, I don't know. I'm not sold that this is going to get them any better results than the All-Star game did, especially the week or the year before the Olympics. If they weren't going to the Olympics, I could see it maybe, but the year before the Olympics, I'm going to wait for the Olympics where we'll really see, I think, best on best.
well, when the Canada Cup happened, that was in the fall. Before that was before, and I mean I think that's a better. I actually think that's a better option to do these types of tournaments because it's before training camp. If there's
and I can see that as well, and I can almost see this in a way happening at the same time or just for training camp, where this is your best. Like, let's be honest, most of the time your best players are not playing during the preseason, right? You're giving young guys a slot. So if they do this tournament, say the same time they do the rookie tournaments. Okay, our old guys will go to this training camp that we call the World Cup. Our young guys will come and wear our team logos. Everybody's getting some reps in.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Like I do, I'm kind of intrigued. I'm intrigued to see what happens because it's been a long time. I do think that there's some obvious flaws with it, but I'm going to enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just jaded. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of the All-Star stuff too. I guess maybe I'm just getting sick of the manufactured best on best.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I mean, even the All-Star game, when all these guys were dropping out and stuff, like people didn't want to do it. It was not best on best because it was the replacements. Like in a way, as a fan, I would say just give my guys a rest and let's wait for the playoffs to see best on best.
Yeah.
Like I can see all these things when the NHL wasn't going to the Olympics, needing a way to show us best on best. But now that we're going back to the Olympics, why do we need to manufacture more international play?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I hear what you're saying, but it's about the money.
It is for sure. And that's one of the reasons I like the World Championships is it's still quote unquote best on best, but it's almost your second tier guys. It's a way for Postal and stuff like that to, show themselves off where they wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
I mean, I could see stopping that week during, like you said, the Super Bowl, and maybe show on NHL TV, say, we're going to show the AHL All-Star game, the ECHL All-Star game, the PWHL All-Star games, and we're going to expose you to all of our affiliated leagues.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, you could move Hockey Day in Canada after the Super Bowl, which is really when it should be. It should not be during the NFL playoffs. I think that's just not helping anybody.
Yeah, or if you really want to do something during Super Bowl week, make that your outdoor game instead of New Year's.
Well, they have had outdoor games in the middle of February before. They've done some Stadium Series games before. I believe that was when the New York, Jersey, Philly Rangers played a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah.
Last year, that was what happened. And then you had Carolina and Washington a couple years ago, too. So they do a Stadium Series around that time.
Yeah, I don't know. It just... I don't know. I have no interest in this tournament. I'm just trying to figure out ways to make it more interesting. I don't know if it's just me or not, but I don't care.
Dan, the one thing I'm very intrigued about, an outdoor hockey game in the state of Florida.
What's intriguing about that?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how you do it. I think because it is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, they can manufacture artificial ice. You can make it happen if you want to. It won't be the best surface, but I think you can definitely make it happen.
I guess the temperature will be interesting, but I'm kind of intrigued. I don't know why.
You know, and I think if you want to make this more intriguing, take the Four Nations and put it outside.
They had a junior game outside a couple years ago, right? Canada, U.S. World Junior. They did.
They've had a few of them. And if you remember when Calgary had the outdoor game here in McMahon, there was a Hitman game.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. To me, if we want to see international best on best, I would rather say the NHL joins the Champions League and has either an all-star game or their Stanley Cup team take on the best from all the other leagues. Like that I would watch. Let's see the NHL play the KHL, play the SHL. Like that'd be interesting to me.
Well, yeah, but the Stanley Cup team would win.
Or would they?
Probably.
Do we know that they would? I mean, we've seen upsets at every level. We've seen upsets in the Olympics.
Fair.
Right? I think if I'm that KHL team, I'm coming out hard to show I'm the better team than the NHL team. Like, I think all the other leagues would be going balls to the wall.
I think for me the problem is with the Stanley Cup tournament is it's just too long, too grueling to put them in another tournament.
So what if you did an all-star game where you invite all your partner leagues and you play the NHL All-Stars versus the KHL All-Stars versus the SHL All-Stars versus whoever, and it's essentially quote unquote best on best, and do that for a week?
Yeah. I'm still interested in this over that concept. I know that this is a flawed concept, but it's less flawed than your concept.
I can agree. For the average fan, yes, I agree. The average fan doesn't know those other leagues and doesn't care. They want to see the names they know. Right? TV audiences in North America want to see the names they know.
I think that this has potential. I just think this is sort of the reset of what they tried before. And I'm willing to give it a chance. And let's see where we take it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll give it a shot. I guess. Yeah. I mean, it'll give me. Let's say for me, it's going to be a break in the hockey season, which I think is welcome right now.
That's totally fair. If you want, and that's a mental break is also good enough as well. I totally am with you there. All right. What are you talking about on Fireside Chat?
This week on Fireside Chat will be mostly the Frost Farabee deal, I think, that we'll be talking about, which you and I covered here as well. We're going to look a little bit at, I would say, some of the defense, and if we think the defensemen have been able to step up and fill that spot that Kevin Ball has left in the lineup. We'll probably also talk a little bit about what the Flames need to do going forward, whether that is make more trades, whether that is push guys, maybe try other guys at center, try other guys at different positions, see what those guys can do and know what their assets are there, or if they just stand pat and hope for the best with these guys.
All right. So that comes out tomorrow. I know that there is going to be a plan to talk Canucks. Don't know how the date. It won't be me. So I need to rest my voice. I'm not 100%, but I got through this. So follow us. Of course, you can follow Sean at Beardy Canucks 03, Tyler TNOBLE, Chris is Schneid's SCHNEIDZ. Devin is mostly on Instagram at DHolmesmith. I am KEVOLE. Shifts and Pucks on all the social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter /X, Blue Sky. Subscribe wherever you get your audio. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now. Oops, let's close this.